webinar of 100 watts. And thank you very much, TiE Mumbai, for hosting it. We've changed the format after the first webinar success, and we've changed made it more open because of the demand and the response we got. So today's webinar, the subject is impact of lockdown on global retail. And we are doing this series of leadership leading through the pandemic by 100 watts. 100 watts is a platform, it's an industry-driven platform where we are nurturing innovation in retail technology with the help of industry practitioners. And my name is Ajay Agarwal. I am heading SAP and retail practice at Neelint. And along with that, I also run 100 watts as a platform for these services along with the help of retail practitioners across the country. So today's subject is basically largely because these days in the news you only talk about two things. One is stock market and one is retail, and people are only looking at these two parameters: that what is available in retail shop and what is happening in the stock market. Everything else is completely behind the scene, and we are wondering, how the world is going to be hereafter. So we decided that let's bring some leadership of retail industry and see what are the challenges, what are the solutions, and how we're going to cope with this impact which is happening right now. And not only in India, actually the same thing is happening globally. I was talking to some of the colleagues in the US and the UK who are in the same business, and they were telling similar stories. Unfortunately, they could not join. I wanted one of them to join, but they couldn't join. So let me first start with the introduction of our speaker panel. Today we have a very eminent team with us. Let me start with Kumar Rajagopalan, CEO, Retailers Association of India. He's playing a very important role at the retail industry right now. He's really being the backbone of the whole industry in this moment. Then we have Arindam Dutta. Arindam is the VP
Hello.
Digital and IT from Groffer. Groffer is the online platform which a lot of you must be using. We're waiting for Jacob Singh to join, the CTO of Groffer. And Arindam is from Wellness Forever. Ranjan Sharma is the CIO and head supply chain of Bestsellers, a famous multi-brand fashion chain. Then Vikram Idnani is from Reliance Retail. He heads their IT business. Now I'll start with first inviting all of them to give a 1 minute talk on their perspective about this whole situation to start with. So let me start with Kumar to start with. Kumar, will you give a 60 seconds your perspective on the current situation, and then we carry on.
Yeah, hi everybody. Stay safe. Firstly, thank you for coming in. I think these have been unprecedented times, at least for all of us on the screen, I'm sure. None of us have ever witnessed a time when we had to be necessarily staying at home. None of us had to go through a stage wherein many of the stores nearby were shut. And then a time when you get worried to even walk out to go and buy your own vegetables because you don't know who is going to get stopped or who's going to brush you. So these are not easy times. At the same time, I think it's also creating new life skills for all of us. I'd like to look at that part also because each of us are learning how to really take care of our own houses for sure, and at least most of us. And we are also learning how to start rationing our items at home. So those are things that's happening for us. When this whole thing started, I think the retail industry knew that it's going to happen. The retail industry spoke about it. They had seen what's happening to China, and there was always this murmur sometime last part of February that maybe India will go through the same issues. In fact, we had a retail leadership summit on the 26th and 27th of February. Quite a few people on a hush-hush kind of a tone were speaking to each other and saying, what if? And I think the writing was on the wall. Currently, we are seeing that that things have happened. At the start, it was really tough. And I can tell you that from a retailer's perspective, because there was expectation that at least from a modern retail understanding, most of them will be shut because many of them were in the malls, and the malls were given diktat first, even much before the national lockdown, to be shut all across the country. And that landed retailers into a quandary because they weren't prepared for a long time shutdown. It's never been that all across the country, all the stores were shut for more than 2 or 3 days ever. So this is the first thing that came up. Simultaneously, there was also this pull that was happening from the market to try and keep the essential retail services open. And there was this whole question mark around what's essential, what's not essential kind of stuff. I think thankfully now various things have happened. I won't go deeper into it for now. I will take that as a later time. But currently there are three things that we are trying to work on. One, how do you keep the engine going as far as essential is concerned? Second, what do we need to do to make sure that the industry is prepared when the lockdown gets released partially and then subsequently fully? And third is what would the industry need to be able to sustain if this is going to take another 2 or 3 months, which it looks like it might definitely take. So these are the three things as Retailers Association that we are broadly working on currently.
Vikram, thanks, Kumar.
Yeah, so just reiterating what Kumar said, this is an absolutely black swan event for us, completely unprecedented. So everyone's kind of been groping in the dark, so to say. But as I think about it, so this is like put retailers in a very strange situation where a lot of our customers, okay, their businesses have actually come to a halt or are generating a lot less revenue. And hence these guys are struggling with a lot of cash flow issues, okay, on the one side. On the other hand, we have limited set of products available, which is only essentials. So customers really struggling on food and struggling with cash flow on the one side. And if I look at my vendor side of things, similar situation, a lack of demand on the non-essentials. Hence, a lot of the vendors are now struggling with cash flow issues and capacity issues. So I think from a retailer point of view, it's become a very tricky situation to handle both sides, which are both struggling on cash naturally. So as a retailer, I think it becomes our duty, not to make this a time for profiteering, because even though there is a demand on essentials, but focus on really fulfilling the demands that the industry needs at this point. I think that's the key point for us. Ensure we are just fulfilling demand and make sure we are reaching out to the customer properly with the right kind of products that they need. And I would say one more point that retailers, I guess, during this downtime, one of the important things for us to do is to ensure that we are preparing for, again, as Kumar highlighted, post-lockdown, what happens. So there might just be a surge in certain types of categories. How do we ensure that we make that available, given that our vendors will be coming out of cash flow problems, our customers will be coming out of cash flow problems. So how do we ensure that we use this downtime very well to prepare ourselves post-lockdown? So I'd say that's my point of view on the current situation.
We come to Arindam. Thanks, Vikram.
Thanks, and thanks for giving this opportunity. I'm hoping everyone is safe and healthy. Yes, this is a once in a lifetime kind of event for most of us, if not all of us, I think. The words, I think, echo across. It is unprecedented. What is also almost heart-wrenching and sometimes very astounding is the number of deaths across geographies, the number of infected people, and sort of the helplessness which is felt in many cases. So I think that's very prominent. And in all of this, what has become very evident is wellness and health. I mean, while we keep talking about it, it comes back in our minds once in a while. In our busy days and lives, health is wealth. It's kind of got underlined in these recent times. And in terms of wellness forever, we've tried and we are continuously trying to do our bit in ensuring that we customers to who really need all of what is essential, all of what is important. So we have been able to, at least most of our stores remain open 24/7. We have been available omni-channel through the app, through the 1-800 or contact number. We are available through WhatsApp channels. In fact, how we are trying to operate is our motto internally is we will be at work while all of you stay safe at home. But we've had our skins on the system as well, like everyone else, the supply chain and the operations. But till date, we've been able to hold fort, and I think the support all across, many of you who are on the call are possibly our customers. I think that's immense. So I think I look forward to the future, including the post-COVID scenario, with a lot of positivity. I think that's what will take us through. And I'm pretty sure within this group, whoever is listening in, we'll be able to not only look at the challenges, but look at some of them, if not most of them, as opportunities, and get some very good solutions as we look to the future. With that, I give it back to you.
Thanks, Arindam. Ranjan, quickly.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the show. And it's happy to see that on a Sunday afternoon, so many people joining. And when I heard the numbers, I was really, really surprised because I did not expect so many people to join. Great work by Ajay and team. Uh, while from a fashion industry, it's too early to understand what this means to us, but definitely this has been creating a lot of challenges and problems for us because we've never seen something like this happening. Yes, a few stores shutting down in some areas, some regions, for sure, a lot of us have seen through recessions we've seen through, but then the whole world coming to a standstill is something which was never imaginable. As technology leaders, we've always tried to do BCP, but BCP has been more from a perspective of how do you deal with uh, continuity in terms of a regular thing. If it's a region goes down or there is some disaster which happens somewhere, your data center goes down, a distribution center goes down, one office goes down. How do you manage with that? Leaders, if they are not available, how do you manage with that? But this is something very, very unprecedented, very, very unseen and unheard. At least not that I remember having seen in my career of so many years, and not heard from too many people. So definitely this is a very, very different kind of a situation. But at the same time, it also gives us an opportunity to take a step back, because what this has also done is locked us all in our homes and given us an opportunity to take a step back, see how the business that we've been running, because on a day-to-day basis, many things that we've not seen or we've not realized, uh, it's time for us to relook at every decisions that we've made. Maybe look at it from more from a different perspective, from a different lens, and see if certain things the way we were doing makes sense or that does not make sense. It also gives us an opportunity to reinvent our own business models, relook at the way how we've been running them, relook at the way how the organization structures have been, and also plan to see how it would evolve. There are definitely some learnings which are coming from China, where things have started opening, but then will all of it
We lost you, Ranjan. So maybe Jacob, welcome to the platform. We're waiting for you. Anyway, why don't you start with the 1 minute? Jacob is the CTO of Groffer. Jacob is in the middle of the action, and I think he's serving the country in a very big way, in a different way across the country, in a completely different manner. And Jacob, 1 minute for what is your view on the subject of the discussion today before we come down to the main question answers.
Sure. Everyone. I think when this happened, so even though we had a slow build, it wasn't like it happened in one day, but the curfew notice happened in one day. And I think that, well, history can judge whether that was a good decision or not. It definitely caused a lot of problems with our whole supply chain. So people couldn't get to work. The cops were also, as you probably know, like thrashing folks in the streets. We had governments shutting down our warehouses, meanwhile calling us essential, but also making it impossible for us to do the essential work that we're supposed to be doing. So total confusion. Now we got out of that pretty quickly in terms of working with government agencies, talking to the right people, setting up synergies with other companies. You know, we're working with several different companies we never thought we'd work with. We're working with a dye manufacturer and a clothing company and various, you know, people who can provide warehouse staff so we can operate at higher capacities. And so that's interesting, the sort of flexibility that's occurring. So I think there's basically two stages to this. One is this happened, and because of that, we had a massive backlog of orders. We would never be able to reschedule them. Some had to be canceled. We created a lot of customer experience problems because of the massive interruption that happened. Now, there's digging ourselves out of that and getting to some sense of normalcy, which we've done largely through pretty agile changes to the way our supply chain works, the way customers order. And I can talk about some of those if you're interested. So we sort of looking at ways to do our peak rotation at the level, instead of at the warehouse level. So for instance, getting a society to make a bunch of orders in bulk, delivering in a big truck and having the picking and sortation happen there. You know, for instance, looking at opening dark stores in different areas, different partners, sort of to handle deliveries at a more hyper-local level. So various changes we made very quickly to kind of increase throughput as much as possible while we're operating at about less than half capacity, mainly due to labor shortage. So there's that period of the interruption and the pain that followed it, and digging ourselves out and giving customers something they can rely on, which basically we open slots every day and we're just doing 4 days of booking and that's it, and we shut them. And demand is so high that we have to do that. Otherwise we'll book for a month within a few hours probably. And now there's getting used to the new normal, where even if we relax the curfew, which will be relaxed at some point, online grocery or people not going out much will become the new normal. How do we, and the other new normal is that joblessness will hit levels that none of us have ever seen in our lifetime, probably that the modern capitalist state has never seen. You know, if you look at, I was going to share my screen, but you can look at, I don't know if you guys have seen the Bureau of Labor in the US and the joblessness claims there. I think that the previous peaks were around like 700,000. And we went to 6 million.
We'll come to that, Jacob, later in the program about the
between that. India follows a similar pattern, as well as the migrant crisis, which I think is quite large, which is sort of the bedrock of most of our industries. It's going to be a really interesting time in terms of, even for essential services, even for those of us who have demand, who have too much demand, even sort of serving that demand is a challenge we're not really sure how to face yet. So that's what's going on.
Thanks, Jacob. Thank you very much. You have been in the middle of the whole action, and about one is from the point of view of permissions, authorities, details I've been talking to. They have been one of the challenges about engaging with the authorities, getting various permissions. Slightly touched on earlier, but would you like to give us more in detail that what are the challenges which are more from the logistics point of view, which the industry is going through at the time? Limited fashion we are operating as an industry, but the other challenges which are beyond our control as an industry.
Yeah, it's
and you have been playing a very important role in coordinating the whole thing with all the related stakeholders.
Yeah, sure, Ajay. I think it's been very interesting times. Interesting because if you really look at what happened when lockdown got announced, and it came in like a bolt for everybody, right? The cops were asked to stand on the road and start judging who is going to be allowed to cross by and who won't be allowed to cross by. And that individual cop or the policeman meeting that individual who is crossing the road became the biggest moment of truth for everyone. And in the initial phase, there were a whole lot of instances wherein there was thoughts around police brutality, police actually beating up some guys, they're taking them to jail, and some of these were people who were from the essential services sector. In the initial phase, the only clarity that had come as far as essential services was for people in the medical profession. Most of the others landed into trouble. I mean, all of us have heard how some of the guys who were on media were getting hauled up. We heard of bankers getting hauled up. quite a few retail personnel got hauled up, because I mean, on the one hand, these guys are really young, 20, 21, not necessarily coming from any big background, so they do not have the personality or the wherewithal to go and stand in front of a policeman and try and reason it out with them. And many of the policemen started really taking their own decisions. So the first thing that we had to do was to try and get, on the one side, the authority to come in and tell us in clear terms what is allowed, what is not allowed, and whether they'd want to come in and intervene if there are issues. On the other hand, we also thought that this is the right time for our HR heads in retail companies to teach normal life tactics to these boys and girls who are coming to the store. It's one thing to brave it out on the road and do what you need to do. It's something else to go and meet a policeman who's actually been under solid amount of pressure, to try and talk to him in such a nice manner that he'll let you go by realizing that you are from essential services. Uh, so the HR actually took up that part, and I think we sent a whole lot of things that they should do, they should not do with the policemen, and that was the first problem. But this also created an ancillary problem. When some of the people got beaten up, they also sent immediately messages to all their friends. So the number of people who came in for work drastically reduced. Even today, as we speak, about 30% of the people are really coming into work. Two reasons. One is that they do not want to face a possibility of somebody hauling them, although in most parts of the country now that problem is got sorted out with passes, etc. And the other reason is they believe that even if they sit at home, they're going to get their salary. So they really don't see the reason to come and work. On the other hand, some things good happened. Most of the states, and we are in touch with all the states currently, we've created WhatsApp groups in every single state. It started with Mumbai, and then it quickly spread to other parts of the country, where we got in touch with the municipal commissioners, we got in touch with the police authorities, we got in touch with various service providers, suppliers, warehouse owners, front-end delivery companies. All of these actually came up in a single WhatsApp group, and that's really allowed us to really work. It meant quite a few groups for us as Retailers Association, but I think that's same for almost everybody who is in those groups now. And I'm seeing that most of the direct to home delivery kind of companies are also on that group. People who are into manufacturing are on the group. So we're now sorting out issues. There are still problems, there are still interpretations, there are also interpretations about what is essential, what is not essential, although there's a clarity that's come from the center around it. It has got its amount of issues, but thankfully I think at least we know what's happening, I think at a broad level, not necessarily each case. And some of these issues, I have to say now that the police are now being, at least the higher ups are being slightly more forward about clearing up unnecessary friction on ground. We have to realize this country is complex and people don't necessarily understand what a lockdown means. So they seem to brave it out more, and that's really creating issue for that one single policeman at the front end. I mean, I have all my empathy for that policeman, but it's a tough job.
Thanks, Kumar. So let me come back to Arindam and Jacob, because you guys are handling very, very critical categories, pharma and essentials and groceries and home food and grocery, and where there is the maximum pressure in these two categories right now. And it looks like, Arindam, you mentioned that you are an omni-channel through all the, whether in stores are open, online is open, deliveries are open, whereas Jacob, you are only doing home deliveries. So one is taking the cue from what Kumar said just now. What are the kind of challenges you're having in terms of home delivery as of now from the point of view of permissions? Because I was talking to one of the large home delivery player, and they said they have operating only at 40% capacity because of the permits, road permits given to their delivery team. So that is one. And then I come down to other challenges of in terms of merchandising. As earlier you mentioned about the range, what is the kind of products, essential, non-essential. So let me start with you, Arindam, first. And we touched upon briefly about you as a pharma store, not only selling pharmacy product, but also you're selling personal care products. So how do you differentiate, and are you allowed to sell or not? So can you just reflect on that?
Yeah, thanks for that. So we've faced some of the challenges which Kumar talked about. As he mentioned that there was clarity, or at least expected to be clarity on medical or medical related personnel to be given, that kind of free flow. But, everything was a learning for everyone. So in the first initial days, we faced our challenges, even in some of our personnel reaching the stores on time and so on and so forth, because of some of the things Kumar mentioned. In terms of, the commodities itself, yes, you're right. We've been following the, recommendations from the regulators as required and as available in terms of adhering to the essential commodities. But what has honestly made is things like surge buying, right? So just before, or there is a sense of, okay, this lockdown is going to take effect, or some of the dates when certain announcements were made, that surge buying, that really tested and strained, some of the supply chain. So that did sort of create some constraints, some need of further agility, which we were able to handle, thankfully, to a great extent. And we continue to learn. So that's the new normal, I guess. What happened yesterday is not what will happen tomorrow. And that's where we continue to look at what scenarios can unfold, and accordingly do the, commoditization and the merchandising accordingly.
So what is the okay? Jacob is gone. What is your situation with your supply chain in terms of your from your suppliers, and on what are the kind of challenges you're having in terms of predicting on what you need and what you need to stock, and what is the kind of stock levels you need to retain and maintain?
Yeah. Is that a question for me,
Yeah, I
Arindam?
mean Jacob was
Yeah.
not there, so I thought I'll just check with you first and before I move on to Jacob.
Yeah. I'll
Back
share
to
my
you.
thought and Jacob can pick it up. From our end, we are trying to, look at within the essentials, even within the pharma related products, what is the trend. And of course, that's where some level of analytics, some level of digital really seems to be working. At the same time, it's also sort of a scenario planning to say what would potentially be required distributors with the supply chain. Again, it's not easy at the distributors end, but where things have been helping us is we do have some centralized distribution centers, and they have had decent stock. And as of today also, we have decent stock on some of the key items, good number of SKUs. So having that kind of centralized approach has also helped. But again, availability and movement of distributors at certain points in time have been some bit of challenges. But as Kumar said, uh, very strangely, sometimes some of these small groups coming together, even on WhatsApp, really helps. So it's as per the situation, as per the day, as per the hour or minute, some calls have been taken. So agility has worked, is what I would summarize.
Thanks. So Jacob, you're back. I was saying that one is in terms of authorities, in terms of your permissions to go home delivery, because your business entirely depends on home delivery. And how are you coping? What kind of capacity level you're hoping? And number two is what is the challenges you're having in terms of range management? Have you reduced your range offering based on essentials and non-essentials? And how are you managing the supply chain of the same?
Yep. Okay. Can you hear me okay? You said the
Yeah,
volume was a
better.
problem. So,
You need to
okay.
be a little louder. Yeah.
I see. So we're not constrained at the last mile stand. There's plenty of delivery drivers still available. I wouldn't say plenty lasts forever. Some territories are less than others. That's not yet a problem. We're constrained at the warehouse side. So that's where we're unable to pack orders fast enough. So we've done several things to address that. And again, like Arindam was mentioning, the agility is crucial for us. So for instance, we started putting limits on the number of SKUs we could order. One, to prevent hoarding, and two, to increase our picking efficiency. If a guy has to go pick up 10 different products as opposed to 20 different products, then we've increased our efficiency significantly. We started inventory limiting to prevent hoarding, and that makes pack sizes smaller. We raised the minimum order value pretty significantly, because that's going to mean that we're doing fewer deliveries. Somebody orders once every week instead of twice or whatever, that kind of thing. So all different things to shape demand to create throughput. We've also looked at, like I mentioned earlier, pushing the supply chain forward. So basically sending unpacked orders closer to a location and packing them closer to the location. Getting whole societies to buy together in bulk. So if you're from a certain society who signed up with us, your app looks very different than somebody else right now. We use geotagging, and we've drawn polygons around certain societies. And so if you visit from there, you see a different store, which only allows you to buy within your society sort of buying group. We've limited our assortment pretty significantly to essentials. Obviously that hurts our business a lot, because in the grocery business, that's not where you make your money. But I think it's the right thing to do to serve as many people as we can and serve as many households as fairly as we can. And so, yeah, that's also been a change that we've made. In terms of the permissioning and all that stuff, in the beginning, it was quite painful. Every city is different. I think, as Kumar was mentioning earlier, different ones respond at different speeds, different ones respond in different ways. At some places, we were rushing to get, I'll give you an example of how sort of I think that the government, or a lot of us, underestimate how connected supply chains are. So they said you need to have company uniforms. Now we rely on an outsourced delivery fleet. So most of our people 90% of them don't have uniforms. So all of a sudden we have to get uniforms for people. So we're trying to get t-shirts done. Now, where do you get 5,000 orange t-shirts in short notice? All the factories that produce them are closed. We finally found someone who has t-shirts, but they need to get the logo printed on them. All the printers are also shut. How do you get that done and keep the essential services moving? Those are not considered essential businesses, but ultimately they contribute to an essential business surviving. And I think we're running into a lot of these things and trying to, negotiate. But unfortunately, every city government, every state government is operating sort of independently currently, which has made it take a while. And we're still not there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Once that gets freed up, we should have the capacity to return to normal. There are people who are willing to work, but obviously that's also a challenge.
Thanks. So let me come back to Vikram. Vikram, you are like in a very strange situation. Only one format is working. And I remember having some discussion with you a few days ago where you were talking about how you're struggling to manage the supply chain of non-essential brands. And those are different kind of challenges. So will you shall reflect on what are those challenges and how are you coping with them?
Yeah, so let me first make one point to Jacob. He wants 5,000 t-shirts. Here I am. I'll get you 5,000 t-shirts.
Well done.
Because that's one of the non-essential categories that is clearly impacted, fashion and lifestyle. So if I talk about FNL, basically with an abrupt shutdown of stores, you now have stock, and not only us, but a lot of you have sitting in stores. So now you've got inventory that's lying, is not sold. You're kind of holding that inventory. It's the current season which has got impacted because there's obviously no demand from customers. So that's just lying out there. Not only is the current season impacted, on the other hand, your vendors are struggling, right, with their cash flow, their staff, their manufacturing capacity has naturally gone down. So it's not the current season that's impacted due to demand, but due to supply, at least what I anticipate. I'm not sure how it will play out for FNL, but I think in the next season, we would get impacted by on the supply side. And I think that's where we have to figure out how we're going to, we as in any retailer is going to kind of bring in, be able to get the kind of stock that they need. Because once the lockdown ends, I do anticipate also that there will be a good amount of demand on non-essentials. So being agile on that front to be able to get product, I think that's going to be key for a non-essential industry. I think Jacob and Arindam talked about on the food and essential side of things. I won't reiterate, I won't restate the same points that they talked about. Very similar things happening on our side. Bulk ordering. You've got to reach the customer because the customer cannot reach you. So those kinds of things. But I think one point which has not yet been touched upon is also about the fact that some of the customers were specific about touchless delivery. So you got to make sure that there is not somebody handing over a product to a customer because just the sensitivity of the current situation. Hence, touchless delivery is an important factor also that the essentials guys who are providing have to take care of. So I think primarily that's the key. If I'm talking about essentials, again, a little bit more, as I talked in the starting point, at the starting point, that this is a very anxious time for customers. So I think what we have to do, what our duty is to make sure that we give predictability to customers, that this is a set of X number of products that are surely available and will reach you. They might be a little late, but they will surely reach you. Because I've seen across the industry during this last few weeks that when you place an order for essentials, you typically may not get the entire order. You might get different brands, different brands from what you've actually ordered. So I think the key is about making sure you are being predictable to the customer, that this is the product you need, this is what you'll get. So keep it limited, keep it simple. Don't try to give too much of an assortment, I would say, to the customers at this point. Just fulfill demand is the current strategy.
Thanks. Kumar, I want to come back to you. I had recently in the last week in the US alone, around 1 million, some of the leading retailers furloughed around 1 million employees. And same thing seems to have happened in Europe in a big way. In John Lewis shut down all their stores. In India also, there has been a certain formats where the people are just sitting at home. And what do you think is the impact of these people sitting at home? What is the industry looking at? How industry is looking at the employees side from during this? Everybody's under cash flow pressure. Also, is there a viability of people being used across, because there is a surge of people demand in certain formats across brands or across formats? Are they trying to cross use these employees? So what's your industry view about it?
Yeah, good question. Frankly, as far as I'll first answer the second part of your question because that's interesting. We called this the Food Soldiers Project as RAI. The Food Soldiers Project was aimed at making sure that food is available for consumers at the front end. And there the main issues that we had seen was that there was this whole supply chain problem on the one hand, and then there was this problem of people availability, and the third problem was about reaching the food to the consumers' houses. So we did 3 tie-ups, if you look at it at a broad level, for the Food Soldiers Project. One was to try and get this whole WhatsApp group, which I earlier talked to all of you about, is about making sure that the WhatsApp groups will ensure that supply chain is getting restored to as near normalcy as possible for the essential products. The second thing was that there were people not available for essential goods selling, and there were lots of people available in the non-essentials part. So currently that thing is on, that the non-food retail employees are available to be recruited by the food businesses, so to say, so that they could take them for a temporary period and use them to work and make sure that they are serving the consumers. Again, not everybody wants to join there. Not everybody would like to go from a non-food to food for this time. But there are lots of people who want to do that also. So that's the second part that's happening. In fact, the entire HR heads of all our RAI companies are talking to each other. We've got a full screen going as far as availability of people is concerned. As on date in the morning, we have 7,400 people available and 3,500 people required. That's the status as on today in the morning. So that's something that we are doing on both sides. The third part was to tie up and allowed for retailers to tie up with delivery companies like Swiggy, Zomato. I think there's also some work happening with Groffers to make sure that, and Big Basket, of course, on a very large level, to make sure that people can get their food delivered, so they don't need to venture out of their house at all. So that's the one part as far as food soldiers as a project is concerned. All these three are done under the aegis of RAI currently, but frankly, it's idea of various people, various members and non-members coming in to make it happen. The second part about salaries and continuity of payment. Here we are in a catch-22 situation, because on the one hand, retailers have really nurtured talent to be able to work with them. It's not easy to be working in the retail industry. All of us know it's all about aptitude, but more than that, it's about attitude. And those kinds of people, once they are nurtured, are not easy to let go. Uh, However, our belief, as we sit today, as Retailers Association, from what we've done with the dipstick of the modern retail, is that almost 25 to 30% of them would go out of the market in the next 6 months if there is no kind of cash impetus or some kind of support that comes in, either from the banking system or from government as a subsidy. Those are things that we are really pushing for currently with the government as well as with the Reserve Bank of India, so that liquidity comes back into the hands of the retailers. It's not as if the demand is going to pick up immediately. So we've got to make sure that there is enough money there. Just to give you a small sense, just the formal retail sector in this country, which is accounting for about $60 billion or so, would easily be having about $500 million of expenditure per month. And that has to be really coming out of the pockets of the retailers, because there is no income coming. This is zero income industry currently. Zero top line, and all expenditure, which is 85% of the expenditure of retailers, is fixed. That's where the biggest issue is, rental and people costs. So we are currently working at various levels in the government to try and see if we can get subsidy. Globally, we've seen this happen. Singapore has come out and done a few things. US has done a few things. UK is doing a few things. We do hope that our government also comes in and pitches to help sustain this very people-intensive industry. We've got about 46 million people in this industry. 40 million of them are in the informal sector, 6 million in the formal sector.
Thanks, Kumar. I'm just told by the host that Jamshed Dabu, the managing director, just recently retired from Star Bazaar, Tesco Star Bazaar, is also on the call. And I would like to invite Jamshed to make some comments on what we have been talking till now. Jamshed, if you can give us a minute, please.
Yeah, just a minute. I'm getting my screen on full.
Yeah, we can see you, Jamshed.
Yeah, I'm just trying to. Sorry, can you repeat that? I was just fiddling around.
So I was saying that since you are here, let me take opportunity to hear your views of what do you think about the current situation, challenges, and how it looks like.
Thanks, Ajay. See, I think all those who have spoken, plus basically our general knowledge itself tells us what the challenge on the ground is. However, I think amongst all of this, what is happening, I think a small group of people have to start thinking about the next steps. Where we are today, we got to do what we got to do. But at some stage, we will have to now start thinking of how to open up the economy a little bit, especially for us retailers. And I think it's very important that we all put our heads together to give the government and ourselves some sort of a roadmap with 2 or 3 scenarios. Now, none of these scenarios may play out exactly the way we wish it, but I think if we are ready, our ability to bounce back faster will be much, much better. I think different sectors of the retail industry have different kind of challenges. And for each of these sectors, I think the sector specialists should get together to come up with a roadmap. I mean, we look at food retail. For us, food retail, to my mind, will be a lot easier to get back on the rails because it's an essential item, and the supply chains are still not yet broken, and I think within the next 1 month it will stabilize. But other forms of retail are very important for the economy to kickstart, and I think we need to come up with a strong plan for the government and for ourselves to start implementing that. I mean, I feel that that would be my view going forward. if one were to take a guess, I think the situation will remain like this for at least 2 more months before we will be able to see any light of the day, irrespective of what the lockdown period is all about.
Thanks, Jamshed. Thank you for your.
Thank you. Thank you for asking me.
So let me come back. I've been seeing a lot of questions coming in about manufacturer and support, about the supply chain, and also I can see that the audience here in this event is largely the retail professionals, especially from the technology side. Now the question in everybody's mind is, what is the role of technology to play in this particular scenario? Now let me go back to everybody to start with. Let's say Arindam, I can see him. And what do you think the role of technology is there, which can help you at this moment to deal with some of the challenges you have in hand? Is it different than what you were using earlier in terms of your ability to deal with the current situation? Your current technology is good enough, or what are the kind of technology you will be moving into to look at the situation?
Yeah, great question. So I see it in two ways. And of course, while there are challenges and equally possibly there are a lot of opportunities, and hence the need for the right technology solutions. And it's got mentioned already in the discussion. There is a lot of uncertainty, right? But in all of this, what will be looked at as solution is any incremental level of certainty that can be provided. And it's the term itself has to be interpreted. What also is happening and possibly going to remain that way is the time duration of that outlook into the future may actually be in the range of days. So can I get a little bit of better predictability for the next 2 days or the week and so on? And that's where I think, while solutions like augmented analytics, artificial intelligence, and all of this continue to remain, I think that time window, at least for the short run, is going to get crunched, and it's already happening. So that's one leverage of the technology and the digital solutions. The second, of course, I mean, goes without saying, a better customer experience within the new normal. Possibly, I don't know, have started or will start soon to miss the stores, a visit to a physical store. And how do we make that happen, if at all, with technology, with keeping in mind the 3 feet distance, with even further keeping in mind, I think Jacob mentioned or someone else mentioned about touchless. So keeping all of that in mind, how that can be brought out through technology. The other bucket, of course, I think there are several areas, but other bucket, and we've already started using it a lot, and some of us possibly more overnight, is solutions, collaborative technology solutions, which help us to operate efficiently remotely. Wherever we are, however we are, work needs to happen, and it's happening sometimes pretty efficiently, and how that is taken forward in the new normal. So those are the 3 areas I would like to highlight.
Kumar, a lot of people are asking question about how will it change the customer behavior, this whole experience of Corona lockdown, and also how will it change the attitude of retailers in terms of customer engagement thereafter? In your opinion, as an industry leader, what do you think will be the changes in terms of customer engagement models or customer behaviors?
So, I mean, I can also just give as much as I can understand currently. Okay, and the thought that's coming up is that social distancing will become an important part of whatever a customer does going forward, at least for the next 4 or 5 months. and all kinds of shopping experience that is enabling social distancing will become interesting. So on the one hand, customers have got this pent up requirement to buy stuff. Uh, on the other hand, they have also realized that they can afford to stay at home without buying too much. So there is this kind of a dichotomy that's happening in the minds of consumers. Similarly, they know that they want to buy stuff, but they do not want social brushing to happen. Not butt brushing cannot be taken for a norm for them when they go ahead now. So these are things that's possibly the fact of life for some time. And so my guess is that home delivery will become important, and the consumers will really look at all those retailers who are capable of creating home delivery systems for them. Uh, there is also, at the same time, I believe that click and collect will become extremely important. In fact, if we all can think about a scenario where many of our own, let's say, kiranas, and I have to give a salute to the kiranas who really got this nation to where it is today, because in most other parts of the world, because there are no kiranas, people had to stand in line, social distancing was not possible. We were really saved because we've got this plethora of kiranas in this country. One store for 120, 130 customers is what is the ratio in this country. That is help. But even kiranas may need to create a method by which you could really do a click and collect. And those are things that currently I'm really talking to some of the e-commerce companies to try and get those things enabled for various smaller retailers, not necessarily only to the bigger retailers, but click and collect, delivery at home. Also, the way in which the customers would expect to be shopping would change. For example, would customers be as easy about, let's say, trying garments inside a store as they used to? They may not want to try a garment inside a store for some time because they'll get worried. Why would they try a garment that's already been worn by somebody? So all these kinds of new behaviors are something that we'll need to be very careful about. My understanding is, and this is what we are creating a whole lot of do's and don'ts to this, is that home delivery, almost everybody should be ready with. They should have the ability to give that as our offering. Second thing is, every single retailer should create enough to be able to take care of social distancing requirement. Three, every retailer should be able to start and stop fast enough. Because, I was listening to what's happening to China today, to the theaters. It's not as if the theaters have opened up and they've allowed people to come in continuously. 4 or 5 days they allow people to come. Suddenly they find there is too much of a crowd. They've again stopped the theaters from functioning. Now this start and stop will become possibly a case in the point, and one has to be really agile, and agility was spoken by a lot of people. Again, that's something that needs to be really taken care of. Modes of payment, definitely digital payment mode in this country will go through a complete sea change in the way in which we are working. So the technology input for various things like this is where I think people will be investing, and hopefully there will be lots more partners to come in and help them. Profit margins will definitely go down for everyone. But having said that, collaboration is going to be the key to survive. If people don't want to collaborate, I think that they're going to, whether it's online retailers, offline retailers, people who are doing only cash and carry, almost every single business has to collaborate to survive.
Thanks. Ranjan, I'm glad to see you back. You went offline in between. Now, I believe that the fashion has become perishable in the current scenario, right? Like it's become a food item, so how are you dealing with? You're completely in fashion, and we missed you at that time. That what is the kind of, how are you dealing with the whole thing, and what is the kind of, are you looking at any technological intervention to deal with this at this moment?
But I think technology is definitely in the current context playing a large role because everyone is sitting at home. What is also important is not just that the work should go on. We should start planning and working upon what is life after COVID-19. What will we do? How will we start working once the stores open? Once our distribution centers open? How will we engage? How will technology play a role in terms of ensuring social distancing? How will it ensure that shoppers are still coming to stores? You still are able to run those stores and sustain those stores. One of the very, very important aspect that we've not talked much about in this session today is about the employees themselves. Imagine we have 3,500 people sitting at home today, have nothing to do. It might become too depressing at times because you don't have anything to do. You can't meet your friends. You're there at home all the time worrying, looking so much of news, which is so much of negative news on the news channels, and might be worrying for your future, for your family, and for everyone else. Might even be fearing about going and meeting your best friend. And how do you keep the momentum up? How do you ensure that these people stay engaged? So there are many more things that we are doing on a daily basis apart from upskilling our people, training them. It is also about keeping them engaged and making them feel that they are part of an organization, they're part of a larger family, and we care for them. So a few things that we've been doing is about taking a health update from everyone in the organization on a daily basis in terms of understanding if they and their families are safe, and if there is something that we can do to help them. As simple as that. Then about engaging them in terms of different kinds of new things that we are ensuring that they learn every day. This is during the lockdown. What do you do post the lockdown? Things are not going to remain the same, because yes, though it used to be perishable, but we at the same time fall into a lifestyle category as well. And will that be the biggest priority for people, especially when we are talking of uh, jobs at a risk, where uh, people at a risk in terms of being even willing to go out into the shops and shopping? How do you deal with all of these situations? So omni channel is a big push. So there are certain technologies where we are prioritizing. So they were there, uh, they were there on the plans, but what we are doing is today trying to prioritize and see what could be brought forward. What was supposed to be done about 6 to 8 months later, we are saying how can we deliver them in a couple of months or maybe in a few weeks. Some of the other things in terms of the distribution centers, how could we enable, because one of our distribution centers will have anywhere at about 450 to 500 odd people in that distribution center. How do you ensure the safety of the people itself who are going to come to work? How will one about taking care of the safety of the customers, but also about taking care of the employees themselves? One of the big things that we've also learned, very rightly said by Arindam, is uh, work from home, because that was not a culture in our organization. At least we felt always that we are into fashion and everything will be touch and feel. When customers are not going to be ready to touch and feel, how do you ensure uh, what kind of employees you bring to office, what you do not, what kind of employees you bring to your distribution centers? uh, how can you manage with some people working at home, some people working in your offices once the lockdown is over? And the lockdown is not going to be over one fine day. It is going to happen over a period of time. So how do you ensure that you are taking care and using the right technologies, whether it is AI, whether it is machine learning, or some of the new things in terms of the vision technologies, where you are also being able to monitor and see that the social, because one thing is about at the time of entry, you have even ensured that people who ever walked into your offices and your distribution centers and your stores, you've checked them. But what happens beyond that? Are you still maintaining the social distancing norms? Are you still one reason why customers come to the store is for experiencing the product, touching and feeling the product, looking at it. At the same time, they might not be comfortable touching a product which could have been tried by someone else. How do you manage those kinds of things as well? So the various challenges, and there are a lot of them are giving us opportunities to even look at things in a very, very different perspective, to see how things will evolve from here. New ideas are cropping up every day. There are new ways of working which are coming up, and we are preparing, gearing up ourselves to handle. Technology definitely is taking up a much larger role, especially where cash is becoming the most essential thing. How do you improve and efficiency? How do you optimize your processes? How do you reduce some of the costs that you have been doing today? How do you cross train and upskill your people so that you could do more from the same set of people?
Thanks. So we are running out of time and we have lots of questions. Now let me go back to all of you one by one and look at the key aspect of this discussion was, how do you think the technology you will change to your view towards technology will change post lockdown? How differently you will use technology to do your business and the use of technology hereafter? Vikram, let me start with you. Do you think your existing technology will be good enough, or you're looking at new model of deployment, new model of new pieces of technology? I mean, just your inputs, all of you, if you can give one by
Yeah,
one.
so I want to add to the points that were just made by Ranjan and Arindam. See, one of the aspects which we didn't touch upon is the last mile from a tech point of view. If you realize what's happening here, let's say that pre-lockdown, there was customers placing an order for a single set of products. So it was one order, one customer coming through. With this lockdown stage coming into play, we actually have had bulk ordering happening with various societies and all of that stuff, right? So what's stopping me from continuing on with the bulk ordering? Okay. And when I'm delivering one order to a customer, I probably would have been delivering it on a bike. With a bulk order now, I have to be able to very quickly shift from a bike into another vehicle like a small truck. The moment you bring in trucks into your last mile, you then have capacity optimization coming into play, and hence your systems now start to have the ability to do all of that. So my point is, this lockdown has enabled us to shift from, maybe in many cases, from single ordering to bulk ordering, and ensuring how does the last mile now kind of play a role in that. And tech is going to play a very important role in the agility of shifting on your last mile from different types of vehicles, for example.
So
I
you're
think
saying the
that's a key point.
customers are
Another one,
forcing you to change the models here?
no, I'm saying that let's say that pre-lockdown, there was individual customers placing orders for 5 or 6 or 10 products. What's happened with lockdown is now bulk ordering for society. So you can't deliver that on a bike. You have to shift onto trucks. And retailers who have been focusing on various societies across the country have now got to change their supply chain to say, I'm moving from bikes into I'm doing now bulk ordering. In fact, bulk ordering has picked up steam during this lockdown. And I'm saying, what stops us from continuing that? Number two, a lot of retailers have been pushed to reach the customer, through various types of trucks that were mobile. I think that's an important change that has happened, which I had not seen earlier around. So, nothing stops us from continuing that style of working because it's enabled us to reach our customers during their time of need. So I think that's a good play out that's happened with this. Ranjan talked about collaboration. And I want to put one example in the fashion and lifestyle space as an example. Typically, a designer works with a group of people. They work as teams. Okay. And in this lockdown situation, we've had people, even like designers, working remotely and still collaborating as teams. So one of the things that this lockdown has helped us to do is to learn how to collaborate while we are remote. Okay. So I think that's going to be one important behavioral change and important play out for retailers, particularly on lifestyle. That collaboration in a remote manner makes it kind of helps us to be more collaborative. Essentially, that's the point. So I think that's and tech is going to play absolutely a very important role. Whether it be, I think Ranjan talked a lot about the tech that's but within my warehouse, my last mile I think is the key. If I look at my storefront side, yes, there's going to be a push on omni-channel. Definitely, customers have are going to be coming out of this lockdown, I'm sure, with a lot more online awareness and a lot more online kind of convenience. So we will see a lot more online, and hence omni-channel I think is going to be very, very highly pushed post lockdown. So I think tech definitely in multiple areas is going to play an.
So Jacob, coming to you, like you heard what Vikram said, that you have been used to doing individual orders for your customers. So have you seen the surge in terms of order patterns? Your basket value has gone up. Also, I believe that you have opened new cities. So how has technology helped you, and how do you think, what are the new lessons you've learned in the technology going forward from here? Because you will continue to do your business in the same manner, but your method of business may change completely.
Yeah, I feel lucky that we made the right investments maybe a year ago that allowed us to adapt extremely quickly to what happened. And I think that's a testament to not just sort of rolling out features, but having a technology practice which looks at platforms, which looks at flexibility. So for instance, we used to have a fairly brittle last mile system, which is built a certain way. And because we were expanding into very small cities, like we're working in Sonipat and we're working in Guwahati, places like that, as well as, you know, being the largest grocer in Delhi, um, what ends up happening is that the kind of the efficiencies you need in the supply chain, we're all about efficiency, we're all about discounting, we're all about getting someone as cheap as possible. Efficiency means different things in different markets. In certain markets, it makes sense that a truck, certain markets make sense in bikes, certain markets it makes sense to have different distribution points, etc. Different facilities are going to operate different ways. So we built an abstracted last mile system or distribution system where you could have N levels, you know, and sort of the whole return flows, and it could go through third-party providers, our own internal providers. So I think early on investing in that kind of flexibility because of the diverse nature of our business allowed us to very quickly roll out new models. Also, our offline stores allowed us to quickly roll out, for instance, like B2B billing for a nonprofit. So we're supporting the Feeding India Foundation through that. Our previous experience in the marketplace allowed us to quickly roll out dark stores. So we're sort of setting up little dark stores throughout all the cities to be able to do, you know, sortation, delivery at the last mile. Contactless deliveries, similarly, our bots platform allowed us to really quickly implement contactless delivery and the you know, photo verification, all that kind of stuff. So I've been pretty happy. I've been really proud of the team. I think everyone's working 7 days. We're just constantly pushing stuff. You know, the investments we made in DevOps and in testing automation allow us to release really quickly under incredible load without going down too much. We're putting out a blog post in a couple of days. You can read about some of the stuff we've been doing last weeks. Going forward, I feel like we are obviously going to have to reallocate a lot of our team because we have a huge focus on the consumer side of things, which is no longer as relevant. I mean, we've been begging people to pay attention to us for years. And right now we don't have that problem. So a lot more focus on, as others have said, efficiencies, you know, cash conservation, on margins that we can make during this time, making sure we're doing that. But moreover, the supply chain efficiency, the throughput, sort of investing more of our resources there. And that'll continue to be how we evolve and move forward with it. I think ultimately it's put us in a very good position because we've focused on the efficiency of our supply chain and our throughput as a #1 priority for several years now. Just put our company in the position we are in of being able to have the lowest prices and still good margins. And so I think it's just a continuation of what we already do, but at a much more intense scale right now.
Thanks. Arindam, you have any views on how your views of technology, how going forward, how you look at technology's role in your new business models?
Yeah, sure. I've covered some of it already, but I'll, you know, sort of add on to what has been already said, and I agree to all of these observations. So I think, as stated, omnichannel is going to become more and more relevant. It's already in a great way, and that's going to play a bigger role. What also I think is going to happen more, you know, people are going to look at scenario planning even more seriously. You know, by that I mean, if you remember some of the conversations in some of our boardrooms or some of our discussion rooms, and someone would bring up a scenario and the usual rebuttal would be, oh, ye to kabhi hoga hi nahi, and this may not happen ever. That kind of, you know, the whatever you call it, risk management, scenario planning, and hence the tech solutions to deal with what if is going to become more and more relevant. And yes, I'm also happy that my organization did make certain forward-looking investments, which have paid out in these times. And I think that encourages the organization to invest more in that. And in all of it, I think just to underline that fact, because Ranjan brought out some great points on it, the people, and in fact, the people dealing with technology, the people across the organizations remain the biggest asset, because we are talking about unprecedented times where technology, business, everyone has to come together in a big way. And one of the small things which we could do as an organization, for example, is already give out incentive in terms of the salary to all the employees across the organization, especially at the storefront, because they are actually dealing with this every day and in a very trying scenarios. So technology, wherever it can play a role in making that collaboration and that positivity in people coming together in a big way, I think that's going to be the new way of doing things as we move along.
Thanks. Kumar, before we round up, your views on role of technology as we go forward in the
Yeah,
current.
I think all of us will, as consumers, will change our behavior, and as retailers will change our behaviors. Look at how all of us are sitting and working and collaborating on Zoom. Cross your heart and tell me how many of you were doing this as efficiently even 4 months before, right? And it's quite possible that consumers would want to come on Zoom and want to buy items and tell you what they want, what they don't want. And like Vikram was telling, if fashion is getting designed on Zoom, fashion may also get bought on Zoom.
Correct.
And we'll need to
Good
start
idea.
thinking about what's happening on a collaborative form all the more. So uh, things will definitely evolve. We'll need to think about the next practices there. It's, as retailers, I would always say, look at what are consumers doing now to be able to look at what would be the new habits that they get formed in these few days. The ability to possibly buy more on WhatsApp, the ability to buy more Zoom, more on collaborative platforms is going to change.
Yeah.
And as retailers, we'll need to adapt ourselves to that part. The second part of it is this whole thing about money. And I think it's proven in this time that almost everybody is wanting to go digital, and digital money will change the way all of us transact, all the way in which we all will understand what money is all about. So that's the other thing that I think each person has to start thinking how to make it so agile. The third part is about this need to be able to create quick uh, go to market understanding, because what this collaboration does is that it brings down the planning cycle for most people. And if a technology is not able to help in really creating agile methodologies of introducing and reducing items that's being sold, I think you may land into trouble as a retailer. So those are things that one needs to think about. The entire merchandise planning cycle will need to be redefined by everybody. The most important part in all this is how are you able to take care of people working with you. I think that's technology that will really help in that. We've seen various people able to work. I've seen myself working with our own CEOs very differently than what it used to be even 2 months before. I mean, as I was speaking to you, there are CEOs who are saying, why don't we have a Zoom call and understand what's happening to the market? And we've already got Zoom calls with our CEOs set up for something else. So these are things that really going to change the way we all work and think. And I hope the technology would be able to create that new paradigms that customers are wanting. Uh, Magic mirrors, maybe that will become now a hit than what it was before, because now if you don't want to try, maybe the magic mirror will become more important. Or for trying, from cosmetics to garments to whatever it is that people are buying.
Thanks, Kumar. I can see Dr. Anand Deshpande is also in the group. And can I invite Anand? Anand, you are one of the gurus in data science. Anand, so if some of you know, Anand is the chairman of Persistent Systems, and he himself is a PhD in data science. Anand, can we have your views for a minute on this whole subject, and what do you see globally, because you are engaging with globally on this front, and what is your impression? Anand, can you hear me? Otherwise, he dropped out. Anyway, so it looks like he may have dropped out. So there are lots of questions. We don't have time. What we'll do, we'll try and answer those questions offline separately, and we will reach out to each one of you. If you can leave your email IDs or in the some of them we will have. But thank you very much, everybody. And our next session is on next Sunday. Idea is that what's in store post lockdown. That's the idea. That's where we will talk about. That's why we didn't take up questions on what is going to happen after this. So next week we'll talk about what will happen, how we are going to deal with the post lockdown situation, how are we preparing ourselves, and thank you everybody for participating and making it such an engaging discussion. Unfortunately, we ran out of time. We couldn't cover everything. And thank you, TiE, once again for supporting this initiative. And we'll come back to you next week once again. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kumar. Thanks, Vikram.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Anand is there. I saw Anand is there. Anyway.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.